The darkness outside your window isn't just a lack of light. Sometimes, it feels like a presence, a watchful silence that stretches beyond the edge of what we can explain. Tonight, we're going to explore those edges, those places where the ordinary bends into something unsettling, something that lingers long after the screen goes dark. These are the tales whispered in the quiet hours, the kind that make you double-check your locks or glance over your shoulder when you're alone. So, turn off the lights, put your headphones on, and let the outside world fade away. For the next hour or so, you're with us and we have some stories to share. Welcome to Scareverse. The house number was written in what looked like permanent marker directly on a weathered mailbox post, not on the box itself, and it was barely legible in the dim glow of my headlights. I was 21, driving for a local pizza place, and it was past midnight on a Thursday, a slow night. Most deliveries were done by then, and I was looking forward to clocking out. This last order had come in right before closing, a large pepperoni, extra cheese, to an address way out on the edge of town that I didn't recognize. Even though I'd grown up here, my GPS had started acting weird too, glitching on and off as I got closer, almost like it couldn't find the street. I kept losing signal, but I knew the general area, so I pressed on. The street itself was called Old Mill Road, and it quickly turned from patchy asphalt to gravel, then just dirt, with trees pressing in close on both sides. I'd driven on plenty of dark roads, but this one felt different. There were no streetlights, of course, and the moon was hidden behind thick clouds. My high beams cut through the inky blackness, illuminating only a tunnel of branches and the occasional reflective eye of some startled animal in the undergrowth. My phone, which usually had decent service even in rural areas, showed 0 bars. Just my luck, the one time I really needed it to confirm I wasn't completely lost. The air got colder, too, as if I'd driven into a different season. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, my headlights swept across a break in the trees, revealing a long, overgrown driveway. There was no house number visible anywhere except that crudely marked post. I slowed the car, craning my neck to see. It was a single-story, dilapidated place, set far back from the road. The paint was peeling, and one of the windows was boarded up. It looked completely abandoned, the kind of house you'd expect to see in a horror movie, not one ordering a pizza. My stomach tightened a little, but I told myself it was just an old house. People live in old houses. Maybe they were renovating, or maybe it was just an older couple who didn't keep up with things. I pulled into the driveway, the gravel crunching loudly under my tires, and parked about 20 feet from the front door. Every light in the house was off, not even a porch light. I cut my engine, and the sudden silence was deafening, broken only by the chirping of crickets and the distant rustling of leaves in the wind. I grabbed the pizza bag and the drink, my small LED flashlight already in my pocket. I usually felt pretty safe on deliveries, but this place gave me an immediate, creeping sense of unease. Still, I had a job to do. I took a deep breath, trying to shake off the weird feeling, and stepped out of the car, pulling the door shut quietly behind me. The path to the front door was cracked and uneven, overgrown with weeds. As I approached, I noticed that the porch itself seemed to sag inward in the middle. I tried to suppress a shiver. I reached the door, a heavy, dark wood, and knocked firmly. The sound echoed hollowly, a surprisingly loud thud that seemed to disappear into the house's silent interior. I waited. Nothing. No footsteps, no light flicking on, no sound at all. I knocked again, a little louder this time, and called out, "Pizza delivery!" My voice sounded small and thin in the vast quiet. Still nothing. My gut was telling me to just leave, but I had to try one more time. I waited another 30 seconds, then decided to try the knob. Sometimes people just don't hear you. My hand hovered over the cold metal, and then, hesitantly, I turned it. To my surprise, the door wasn't locked. It creaked open slowly, revealing a sliver of darkness inside, a stale, musty smell wafting out. I peered into the gloom, my flashlight still in my pocket. "Hello," I called out again, my voice a little shakier now. "Pizza delivery?" The silence that answered was profound, heavy. It wasn't just quiet. It was an absence of sound, like the house was holding its breath. Every instinct in my body was screaming at me to run, but a strange compulsion, a stupid curiosity, kept me rooted. I pulled out my flashlight, clicked it on, and shone the beam into the entryway. It illuminated a short, narrow hall, completely empty. No furniture, no coats on hooks, not even a rug. Just dusty wooden floors stretching into deeper darkness. The walls were bare, faded wallpaper peeling in strips. It looked like no one had lived there in decades. A cold draft snaked around my ankles. I took one step inside, then another, the pizza box still clutched in my hand. I don't know why I did it. Maybe I thought I'd just leave the pizza on a table and get out of there. My light swept across the hall, then onto an open doorway on the left, leading into what looked like a living room. The living room was just as empty. Dust motes danced in my flashlight beam. There was nothing, absolutely nothing, to indicate that someone had placed a pizza order just an hour ago. No couch, no TV, no signs of life. My heart was pounding now, a frantic drum in my chest. I backed out slowly, carefully, not wanting to make a sound. I got back to my car, fumbling with the keys, my hands trembling. I threw the pizza and drink onto the passenger seat, started the engine, and peeled out of that driveway faster than I probably should have. When I got back to the store, I explained the situation to my manager. We checked the order history, and there was no record of a delivery to Old Mill Road. It was like the order and the house had never existed. My manager thought maybe it was a prank call, a ghost order that somehow slipped through the system, but I knew it was more than that. I had been there. I had seen the house, felt the cold, smelled the dust. The next day, I drove back out to Old Mill Road in broad daylight. The road was still there, still dirt, but where the overgrown driveway had been, there was nothing but dense woods. No break in the trees, no dilapidated house, not even the marker on the post. It was just an unbroken line of forest. I drove past it 3 times, getting out to walk the shoulder, but there was nothing. It was like the house had simply vanished, leaving me with only the memory of that echoing knock and the profound, empty silence of a place that shouldn't have been on my route at all. It's easy to dismiss what we just heard as an isolated incident, a strange anomaly. But sometimes, when one impossible thing happens, it opens a door to another. The world outside our familiar path can be far more vast and unknowable than we care to admit. And sometimes, it leads us to places we never intended to find. The house number was spray-painted onto a rock, barely visible in my high beams, but the GPS insisted this was it. I was doing late-night deliveries for a local pizza place, a job I picked up to save for community college. Most nights were quiet, just the usual mix of sleepy families and college students pulling all-nighters. This particular night, a Tuesday, was especially dead, which meant I was already dreading the low tips. I'd been on this route for almost a year, knew the town like the back of my hand. Every street, every turn, every shortcut. I prided myself on that knowledge, especially navigating the winding, unlit back roads that made up the further reaches of our delivery zone. It was usually just me and the occasional deer on those roads after midnight. Tonight felt different somehow, the air thick and still, even for a summer night. The delivery was for a single large pepperoni, paid cash. The address was on the very edge of our service area, way out past the county line where the paved roads started thinning out into gravel. I remember thinking it was odd because usually places this far out ordered more, making the trip worth the gas. As I turned on to what my GPS claimed was Elmwood Lane, I noticed something immediately off. The old, faded green street sign for Elmwood was gone. I mean, not just vandalized or knocked down, but completely absent, like it had never existed. There was just a rusted pole sticking up from the ground, pointing to nothing. I shrugged it off, assuming some kids had probably swiped it for a prank. People did weird stuff out here. My headlights cut through the oppressive darkness, illuminating a long, overgrown driveway that looked like it hadn't seen a car in years. At the end stood an old farmhouse, unpainted and leaning precariously to one side. The porch light was off, which was strange for a delivery, but there was a faint, flickering light coming from one of the downstairs windows, like a television or a candle. The house number spray-painted on the rock, a rough 17, matched what was on my order screen. I pulled my beat-up Civic onto the gravel, its tires crunching loudly in the dead silence. A shiver ran down my spine, but I told myself it was just the late hour and the isolation getting to me. I grabbed the pizza bag and the change for the cash payment and headed towards the front door. The porch creaked under my weight as I walked up the 3 wooden steps. I knocked, a firm, audible rap against the splintered wood of the front door. Nothing. I waited, listening, but heard only the chirp of crickets and the distant croak of a frog. I knocked again, louder this time, calling out, "Pizza delivery!" Still no answer. The flickering light from the window was now more distinct, a pale yellow-orange glow. I peered through the glass of the storm door, trying to see if anyone was coming, but the interior was too dark, the single light source too dim to reveal anything specific. A strange smell hung in the air, something musty and sweet, like old flowers and wet earth. It wasn't unpleasant, just out of place. I was about to give up and mark it as a no-show, thinking maybe they'd fallen asleep or forgotten they ordered. But then I heard it, a faint sound, like a whisper, coming from inside the house. It was too muffled to make out words, just a soft, breathy murmur. It seemed to be coming from behind the door, as if someone was standing right on the other side. I hesitated, my hands still raised to knock again. My heart started to beat a little faster. It felt less like someone was waiting for pizza and more like someone was listening. I called out one more time. "Hello? Pizza delivery." The whispering stopped abruptly. The silence that followed was heavy, almost suffocating, amplifying every small sound around me. My gut screamed at me to leave. This wasn't just a missed delivery. Something felt deeply wrong. But my stupid pride, and the thought of explaining a lost pizza to my manager, made me linger. I took a step back from the door, my eyes scanning the dark porch. That's when I saw it. A small, almost invisible scuff mark on the dusty floorboards, right in front of the door. It looked fresh, like someone had dragged their foot just moments ago. I backed away slowly, my gaze fixed on the door, half expecting it to creak open. The flickering light from the window seemed to intensify for a second, then dimmed again. I could feel a presence, something unseen but definitely there, watching me from within the dark house. It was a primal, unsettling feeling that made my skin crawl. I turned, practically ran down the steps, and scrambled back to my car, fumbling with the keys. I started the engine, threw it in reverse, and peeled out of the driveway, gravel spitting behind me. I didn't look back. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely steer. I sped down the long, dark stretch of what was supposed to be Elmwood Lane, my high beams cutting through the black. I reached the main road, the one I had taken to get here, and slammed on the brakes. My stomach dropped. The road wasn't there. The main paved road, the one I'd been on just minutes before, had vanished. Instead, my car was facing a dense, impenetrable wall of trees. There was no intersection, no highway, nothing but forest. I tried to rationalize it, thinking I must have taken a wrong turn, but that was impossible. I knew these roads. I had just driven straight out of that driveway, onto what should have been the main county road. There was no other path, no side turnoffs I could have missed. I was parked facing a solid wall of woods where a 4-lane highway should have been. Panic truly set in. I put the car in drive, slowly turning around. The dark driveway to the farmhouse was gone too. The entire area where the house and its lane had been was now just more dense, dark forest. It was like the whole section of land had been picked up and replaced with something else, something wild and untamed. My mind raced, trying to find a logical explanation for what I was seeing. I pulled out my phone, my hands still trembling, and opened the GPS app. It showed me precisely where I was, a single blue, in the middle of a blank, green area labeled unsurveyed wilderness. There were no roads, no houses, nothing. My phone, which had just guided me to Elmwood Lane and house number 17, now showed no record of that road, or any road, existing in this spot. The entire area had simply disappeared from the digital map, replaced by blank, green pixels. It was like I had driven off the edge of the world, into a place that didn't exist, and then driven back out again only to find the entry point erased. I drove home in a daze, the untouched pizza still in the warmer bag beside me. I never delivered pizza again after that night. I told my manager I quit, giving some vague excuse about school. I drove back out there a few days later in daylight, retracing my route as best I could. The rusted pole was still there where the Elmwood Lane sign should have been, but it just pointed into a thick, overgrown wood. There was no road, no driveway, and certainly no leaning farmhouse with a number 17 spray painted on a rock. It was just an unbroken line of trees, ancient and silent. Every now and then, late at night, I still find myself looking at old maps or satellite images, zooming in on that particular stretch of road, hoping to see something, anything, that might explain what happened to the house that was never there. But there's only wilderness. The unsettling truth about these experiences is how quickly they can shift. One moment you're navigating the known, the next you're adrift in something utterly foreign. And what do you do when the very ground beneath your feet feels less like solid earth and more like a carefully constructed illusion, ready to crumble? The GPS showed a dead-end street, Maple Trace, that just fizzled out into nothingness on the satellite view, but still had a single address listed at the very end. I was 22, working my way through college, and delivering pizza was my main gig. It was late, almost 1 a.m. on a Tuesday, usually a quiet night, but we'd been slammed with a couple of large orders. This was my last delivery, a single medium pepperoni, and I was looking forward to getting home. Maple Trace was new to me, a street I'd never been down, even though I'd worked this area for 3 years. It looked like a fairly new development, or at least a recent addition to the town's map, a short cul-de-sac branching off a main road I knew well. The odd thing was, Google Maps showed the actual road ending abruptly, with no houses, just woods. Turning onto Maple Trace, the first thing I noticed was the complete absence of streetlights. Every other street in this neighborhood had them, but this one was just swallowed by darkness, relying on the ambient glow from the houses further up the main road. My headlights cut through the gloom, revealing a short, narrow asphalt road that did indeed end in a cul-de-sac, just like the map said. But unlike the map, there was a house. One single, sprawling ranch-style house, set back from the road, almost hidden by overgrown shrubs and what looked like neglected landscaping. It was the only property on the entire street, sitting there in the dark with no other lights visible anywhere nearby. No porch light, no window glow, just a dark silhouette against the even darker night sky. I pulled into the gravel driveway, parking closer than usual just so my headlights could illuminate the front door. The silence was immediate and heavy. Even my engine idling sounded unnaturally loud. I turned it off, and the quiet deepened, broken only by the chirping of crickets that somehow felt more amplified out here. There was no movement, no sound from inside the house. No dog barking, no TV hum, nothing. just this profound stillness. It felt less like a house someone was living in and more like a stage prop, waiting. I checked the order slip again. 14 Maple Trace. This was it. I grabbed the pizza bag and the drink, took a deep breath, and stepped out of the car, the gravel crunching loudly under my shoes. Walking up the short, cracked concrete path, I noticed more details. The paint on the house was peeling in places, a pale yellow that looked ghostly in my phone's flashlight beam. The porch swing was caked in dust, and a few dead leaves were stuck in the corners of the front door frame. Felt old, neglected, but not quite abandoned. Just forgotten. I rang the doorbell, a small, brass button that looked tarnished with age. The sound it made was a faint, tinny chime, barely audible, and it seemed to vanish into the oppressive silence. I waited, listening. Still nothing. No footsteps, no light flicking on. I rang it again, a little longer this time, my heart starting to pick up its pace slightly. Just as I was about to turn and head back to the car, figuring they'd fallen asleep, I saw it. A brief, almost imperceptible flicker of light deep inside the house, through one of the windows to the left of the door. It was gone as quickly as it appeared, too fast to properly register, like a dying match or a faulty light bulb. My rational mind tried to tell me it was just a reflection, or maybe someone walking past a window with a phone. But the feeling of unease lingered. I waited another minute, holding the pizza box a little tighter, my gaze fixed on that window. Nothing. The house remained dark and silent, a sentinel in the night. I decided to try one last knock. I knocked firmly on the wooden door, 3 distinct raps. And that's when it happened. The door, which I had assumed was securely closed, slowly, silently, swung inward about 6 inches. Not all the way open, but enough to reveal a sliver of darkness beyond. No one pulled it, no wind pushed it. It just eased open as if on a hidden track. My breath caught in my throat. I stood there, frozen, staring into the black abyss of the house. I couldn't see anything, just pure shadow. The air that wafted out felt cold, damp, and smelled faintly of dust and something else. Something metallic and old, like stagnant water. I called out, my voice a little shaky, "Pizza delivery?" My voice sounded small, swallowed by the immense silence of the house and the night. No answer. I called again, a little louder. "Hello? Pizza delivery for Maple Trace." I strained my eyes, trying to pierce the darkness beyond the slightly open door. Then, from somewhere deep inside the house, a voice responded. It was raspy, dry, almost a whisper, and it sounded impossibly old. "Just leave it on the porch." The words were slurred, indistinct, but clear enough. There was no intonation, no urgency, just this flat, hollow request. It didn't sound like it came from a person standing behind the door. It sounded like it came from the very walls of the house itself. A shiver ran down my spine that had nothing to do with the cold air. I hesitated for a moment, the hair on my arms standing on end. I had orders that required cash payment at the door, but this one was already paid for online, a common enough occurrence. Still, the whole situation was profoundly wrong. I placed the pizza box and the drink carefully on the dusty porch floor, right next to the threshold of the slightly ajar door. My hand lingered for a second on the warm box, an irrational urge to just leave and run, but also a professional obligation to finish the delivery. I took a step back, my eyes still fixed on the darkness beyond the open door. No movement, no further sound. The house just sat there, breathing its cold, dusty air onto the porch. I turned, practically backing away from the house, and hurried down the path, resisting the urge to break into a sprint. The crunch of the gravel under my feet seemed deafening. I fumbled with my car door, jumping inside, and immediately locked it. I started the engine, threw the car in reverse, and practically peeled out of the driveway. my headlights sweeping across the dark, overgrown yard. I didn't look back in my rearview mirror until I was almost at the main road. The house was a dark, silent monolith in the distance, disappearing behind the trees as I sped away. I called the store when I was a safe distance away, told my manager what happened, and he just said, "Don't worry about it, kid. Some people are just weird." The next morning, the whole thing still bothered me. I pulled up Google Maps, typed in Maple Trace, and zoomed in. The road was there, just as before, a short cul-de-sac. But the house was gone. There was no address listed at 14 Maple Trace. The satellite view showed nothing but dense woods at the very end of the street, just as I remembered it from the night before I'd actually driven there. I checked my delivery records, and the order for 14 Maple Trace was gone, too, like it had never existed. It wasn't just deleted. There was no record of it ever being placed. I drove by that street a few days later in daylight. It was just woods. No house, no driveway, no cracked concrete path. Nothing but trees where that dark, silent house had been. I don't deliver pizza anymore. That feeling, that quiet dread, it often starts small and almost imperceptible shift. A house, a road, a path you thought you knew. But what happens when the familiar becomes a trap? When the very concept of home offers no comfort, only the chilling certainty that you are not alone in its shadows. The house number was clearly 417, but the glowing GPS insisted I was at 419. It was one of those nights where a cold front had just blown through, leaving the air crisp and too quiet for early autumn, and I was wrapping up my shift delivering for a local pizza place. Most of my deliveries were quick, a few minutes at the door, but this one had been a hassle from the start. The address for 19 Willow Creek Lane kept pinging in a spot that didn't seem to have a house, more like an empty lot swallowed by overgrown trees at the very edge of town, where the streetlights gave up. I was 17 at the time, saving up for a beat-up used car, and delivering pizzas felt like a stepping stone to something better. My old Honda Civic, which my dad had passed down, struggled a bit on the unpaved section of Willow Creek Lane. The road narrowed drastically, turning into a gravel path that dead-ended into a dense thicket of oaks and pines. No house, just woods and an eerie quiet that felt heavier than usual. I checked my phone again, the delivery app still showing the destination directly ahead, right where the trees started to close in. Frustrated, I zoomed in on the map, thinking maybe I'd missed a hidden driveway, but there was nothing. Just the dark outlines of trees against an almost moonless sky. I called the customer, but it went straight to voicemail. I tried again, thinking maybe the signal was bad out here. Still voicemail. The pizza was getting cold, and I could already picture my manager giving me a hard time. I decided to drive slowly back down the lane, scanning every shadow, just in case there was some unmarked turnoff I'd overlooked. That's when I saw it. Not a driveway, but a narrow, almost invisible dirt path winding into the woods, barely wide enough for a person, let alone a car. There was no mailbox, no house number, nothing to indicate it led to a residence. But the GPS dot on my phone had shifted slightly, now showing the destination deeper into the woods, right at the end of that faint path. It felt wrong, but I knew if I went back without attempting to deliver, I'd get docked pay, maybe even fired. I grabbed the pizza box and my phone, clicking on the flashlight app, and started walking. The path was uneven, roots and rocks making it treacherous in the dark. The beam of my phone flashlight barely cut through the oppressive blackness of the trees. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig, made me jump. It felt like I was walking for ages, far longer than a typical driveway. Just when I was about to give up and turn back, a faint, flickering light appeared through the trees. It wasn't a porch light, more like a dim, yellow glow, barely there, like an old lamp burning low. My heart thumped, a mix of relief and unease. The path opened into a small clearing, and there it was, A house. It was small, weathered, and looked like it had been forgotten by time. No porch light, no car in the driveway, which was just more dirt. The windows were dark, except for one on the ground floor, where that faint yellow glow pulsed. It looked abandoned, yet someone had ordered pizza. I approached the front door, which was a heavy, dark wood, scarred and peeling. There was no doorbell, just a tarnished brass knocker shaped like a lion's head, which felt oddly out of place on such a desolate dwelling. I lifted the knocker, but hesitated. The silence was unnerving, broken only by the chirping of crickets and the frantic pounding of my own pulse. Something felt profoundly wrong. This wasn't just an old house. It felt different. I took a deep breath, trying to shake off the creeping dread, and let the knocker fall. The sound echoed, far too loud in the stillness. I waited. No footsteps, no voice, no movement from inside. Just that faint yellow light, still flickering in the window. I knocked again, harder this time, calling out, "Pizza delivery for 419 Willow Creek Lane." Still nothing. No response. The yellow light in the window continued its slow, rhythmic flicker. I stepped closer to the window, cupping my hands around my eyes to try and see inside. What I saw made my blood run cold. The room was empty, completely empty. No furniture, no boxes, just bare, dusty floorboards. And the light? It wasn't a lamp or a candle. It was a small, battery-operated LED lantern, sitting on the floor in the middle of the room, slowly blinking on and off. There was no one there, no one to answer the door. Just an empty house, deep in the woods, with a blinking light. A sudden, cold dread washed over me. I backed away from the house slowly, my eyes fixed on that blinking light, a primal instinct screaming at me to run. I didn't knock again. I didn't call the number. I just turned and stumbled back down the dark, twisting path, the pizza box still clutched in my hand. When I finally reached my car, I threw the pizza onto the passenger seat and sped away, not daring to look back. Later, at the store, when I told my manager what happened, he looked up the order. It had been placed online, paid for cash, and the name on the order was listed as unknown. They ended up canceling the order, and I never got paid for it. I never drove down Willow Creek Lane again. Even now, years later, the memory of that empty house and that blinking light in the woods sends a shiver down my spine. It wasn't scary in a monster way, but in a this shouldn't exist way. The address 419 Willow Creek Lane doesn't show up on any modern maps, and the land where that path would have been is now part of a nature preserve, dense and impenetrable. But sometimes when I'm driving at night and the air gets that specific kind of cold, I can still feel the profound, chilling emptiness of that house, waiting for a delivery that was never meant to be received. These aren't just stories. They're echoes of a deeper unease, a reminder that the world holds secrets far stranger than we often imagine. They stay with us because they tap into that primal fear of the unknown, the unsettling possibility that our reality is just a thin veil, easily torn. It's the chill you feel when you're sure you heard something, even though you know you're alone. It's that thought, that lingering question, that makes you wonder what else is out there, just beyond the edge of your perception. For a new story every week, consider subscribing to Scareverse.